There's a moment, quiet but piercing, when you realize you've been here before. Not the exact place, not the same details, but the feeling, the ache of trying again, the hope rising too fast and then crumbling, the loop of almosts and not quites. You start to wonder, is it me? Is something broken in me that keeps pulling me back into the same kind of relationships, the same scarcity, the same internal war between wanting more and expecting the same? And here's the truth that most never hear loud enough to change. It's not that you're broken, it's that you're repeating a frequency that doesn't match what you think you desire. Not because you're wrong, but because you were wired to survive, not to manifest. You see, your life isn't showing you what you want. It's showing you what your subconscious believes is safe, familiar, known. That's what gets repeated, not your dreams, your nervous system's imprint of reality. The safety in sameness, even when it hurts, even when you swear you want something different. And unless you understand this, unless you become the witness, the observer, of the invisible code you're broadcasting, you'll keep scripting the same movie with new actors. Because the projector isn't out there. It's in here, inside your body, inside the electromagnetic field of your heart, and the encoded beliefs hidden in your breath, your posture, your reflex to expect the worst right when it's going well. What you embody, you echo, and what you echo becomes the rhythm of your reality. Most people try to manifest from the mind. They visualize, affirm, hustle, plan. But if your body is still holding the trauma of not having, if your frequency still says, "I don't believe I can keep it," then life will match the signal, not the sentence. This is where it begins, in the silent patterns, in the way you contract when something good happens, in the way you brace yourself for disappointment, even as you smile, in the way your energy waits for permission to feel safe. I used to think manifestation was about clarity, about knowing exactly what I wanted and going for it with all my intention. But clarity without coherence is chaos, energy scattered, desire diluted, because the clarity of the mind means nothing if the frequency of the body contradicts it. You can want love deeply, but if your nervous system equates closeness with danger, you'll repel it without realizing. You'll sabotage, you'll cling, chase, or shut down, not because you're weak, but because you're misaligned, out of tune, sending mixed signals to a precise universe that responds to resonance, not requests. So here's the question that shifts everything. What does your current life say about what you actually believe is safe to receive? Let that sink, not what you want. What your reality says you expect. Because that's the loop. That's the track that plays until it's interrupted. Not with more force, but with more awareness. When you observe the pattern without judgment, something begins to loosen. When you feel the tight grip of needing to control and instead breathe into it, something rewires. That's how timelines collapse, not with urgency, but with intimacy. The kind that whispers, "I see you, I'm not leaving, even now you're worthy." You don't shift your life by effort alone, you shift it by becoming the embodiment of a new signal. A signal that says, "I no longer need to repeat the familiar to feel safe. I no longer have to earn what I already am." And when that signal stabilizes, not just in thought, but in breath, in nervous system, in cellular memory, your reality starts to reflect it, effortlessly, coherently, miraculously, because it's no longer you against the pattern, it's you reprogramming the field. Most people don't realize they're manifesting on autopilot, not from desire, but from memory, not from vision, but from vibration. A vibration shaped by years of repetition, reinforced by childhood moments that taught them love equals tension, success means exhaustion, and peace is something you earn after everything else falls apart. These programs aren't conscious. They're embodied. They live in your shoulders, your breath, your gut instincts, that tightening you feel before you speak your truth. That isn't just anxiety. It's the body remembering a time when authenticity cost you connection. So now, silence feels safer. And when safety is linked to suppression, manifestation gets distorted. You can't attract coherence while vibrating with conflict. You can't receive love fully while bracing for rejection. You can't hold abundance if your system is still coded with "I'm not enough." Not because life is punishing you, but because energy is obedient. It mirrors your signal, not your script. You can beg the universe for a breakthrough, but if your baseline frequency screams "I'm still waiting for proof that I'm safe," then it will keep giving you situations that validate your waiting, your proving, your unworthiness. This is why control feels so seductive, because control is the illusion of safety. If I can just plan better, if I can just anticipate the outcome, if I can just micromanage the timing, then maybe I won't be hurt again. Then maybe I'll finally feel certainty. But control fragments the field. It disconnects you from the intelligence of life, the rhythm of resonance. Control is static, but creation is dynamic. It moves through presence, not pressure, through openness, not obsession. When you grip too tightly, the current can't flow. When you try to think your way into alignment, you block the very signal that alignment requires. Trust. Trust isn't passive. It's an embodied frequency that says, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I'm willing to become the version of me who no longer needs to repeat the wound to feel alive. That's the real shift. Not just thinking differently, but feeling differently. Regulating your system so your body finally feels what safety and expansion feels like. So your energy no longer defaults to protection when something good enters. That's when the loop breaks. When the nervous system stops flinching at the unfamiliar. When the subconscious no longer associates new with danger. Think about it. Have you ever been on the verge of receiving something beautiful? A relationship, an opportunity, a moment of peace, and then suddenly you feel the urge to pull away, to question it, to look for flaws? That's not coincidence. That's coherence breaking. That's your old frequency trying to pull you back to what it knows. Not because it hates you, but because it believes it's keeping you safe. But the truth is, safety has evolved. You're no longer that version of you who had to settle to survive. You're no longer trapped in the echo of old programs. You are the observer now, the one who sees the pattern and chooses presence over panic, the one who breathes instead of bracing, who softens instead of shutting down. And it's in that softness, not weakness, but real receptive strength, that you become magnetic, that you become the kind of field the universe can reflect with clarity, not chaos. Because coherence isn't loud, it's stable, it's consistent. It doesn't chase, it doesn't plead, it emits, and in that emission timelines collapse. The loop ends, not because you fought it, but because you outgrew the frequency that fed it. And the most beautiful part? You didn't force it, you remembered it. You came back to the original signal, the one before the stories, before the fear, before the conditioning. You retuned your life by tuning yourself. And from that place, manifestation is no longer an effort. It's inevitable. There's a subtle power in realizing that repetition doesn't mean failure. It means feedback. It means your field is communicating something important, and until it's heard, it will echo. Not as punishment, but as invitation. Each repeated scenario is a mirror, not of who you are in your potential, but of who you are in your pattern. That version of you that was taught love requires proving, or that success only comes through struggle. That version of you that flinches when things get too still, too calm, because chaos felt more familiar than peace. This is where we meet the unconscious contracts we've made with reality. Agreements we didn't even know we signed. I'll be small if it keeps me safe. I'll stay unseen if it helps me avoid rejection. I'll work twice as hard so no one questions my worth. These are not just thoughts. They are frequencies, stored in your fascia, your breathing rhythms, your baseline expectations. They inform your posture, your reactions, your default tone with life itself. And as long as they're unexamined, they keep scripting your experience. But awareness dissolves the contract, not by ripping it up in defiance, but by saying gently, this is no longer true. This story, this rule, this survival strategy, it served you once. It protected the younger you, but it is not required in the life you are now ready to live. And from this awareness, we begin to renegotiate reality, not from resistance, but from regulation. From the body up, because that's where the programming lives, and that's where it must shift. Regulation is the portal. When you calm the system, you clear the signal. When you slow the breath, you reset the field. That's not just a spiritual idea, that's physics. The heart emits an electromagnetic field many times stronger than the brain, and when the heart is in coherence, emotionally aligned, rhythmically balanced, it synchronizes the whole system. Thoughts change, perception expands, intuition sharpens, and life starts matching that signal effortlessly, because now there's no interference. This is why embodiment matters. You don't manifest from thoughts alone. You manifest from the version of you that your energy confirms. If you say, I'm abundant, but feel tight, hurried, afraid, the field responds to the feeling, not the phrase. But when you breathe abundance, when you move like someone who trusts, when you release urgency and open to timing, then your body becomes the evidence of the new timeline, not someday, now. and that version of you begins to draw in experiences that match it. So what does it feel like to no longer chase life, but to let it come to you? To no longer grip, but to guide? To no longer prove, but to embody? It feels like peace, like power without pressure, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. It feels like not needing signs to trust, because you've become the sign, you've become the vibration that confirms the shift. And when that becomes your new normal, not a peak state but a grounded way of being, your old life simply can't sustain itself. It becomes incompatible. The people, the patterns, the problems that once felt inevitable, they begin to fade, dissolve, or transform, not because you forced them, but because your resonance rewrote the script, and repetition turns into revelation. So if you're still seeing the same loops, breathe, pause, witness. Don't rush to fix it. Just feel what's still being broadcast underneath the surface, because in that awareness, something begins to soften, something begins to open, and from there, a new rhythm begins to rise, one not built on reaction, but on remembrance. The mind will tell you it's complicated, that you need to figure it out, track every pattern, decode every wound before you can move forward. But the body already knows. It's not thinking, it's tuning. It's responding to the frequencies beneath your words. It listens to your breath, your micro-reactions, the silence between your intentions, and it calibrates your field accordingly, which means the real shift doesn't come from understanding more. It comes from embodying less resistance. That's what changes everything when you stop trying to escape the loop and start feeling where it lives inside you, when you notice the tightness before the impulse, the rush before the reaching, the shallow breath before the self-doubt. These aren't just habits, they're anchors to an old identity, a version of you who still believes safety is in control. But control is not safety, it's separation. It cuts you off from the flow, from the organic intelligence that wants to guide you not by logic, but by resonance. Because manifestation is never a mental equation, it's an energetic alignment. The universe doesn't respond to your timelines or techniques, it responds to your tone, the tone of your field, the felt sense of your now. That's why the same action, taken from different frequencies, produces radically different outcomes. Wanting something from fear creates friction. Wanting something from fullness creates flow. One says, I need this to be okay. The other says, I'm already okay, and this would amplify it. That difference, that one shift in energy, collapses timelines faster than any ritual or routine. But how do you access that fullness when you're still in the pattern? You start with presence. You start by interrupting the trance of urgency. You start by noticing the moment you feel yourself reaching outside of yourself for proof, and instead, pausing, breathing, asking, what if nothing is missing? What if I don't need to rush to get there, because who I am right now is already aligned with what I desire, if I would only stabilize it? Stabilization is the key, not high vibration in bursts, but emotional consistency, nervous system safety, the ability to stay open without flinching, to feel the bigness of what's coming and not contract. That's where you meet your future, in your ability to hold the frequency long enough that it becomes your new default, your new normal, your new narrative, not written in thoughts, but lived in energy. It's not about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about not following them, not making decisions from them, not building your identity around them, because fear will always speak first, but presence speaks deeper. And the more you practice presence, the more you hear that deeper voice, the voice that says, you're not late, you're not stuck, you're not broken, you're becoming, you're sinking, you're aligning with the version of you that no longer needs to repeat the same story to remember their worth. And slowly, the loop becomes a ladder, each repetition no longer a failure, but a finer tuning, each moment of awareness, a step closer to coherence. You begin to feel the shift not as a sudden breakthrough, but as a steady homecoming. The space inside you expands, your breath deepens, and what used to trigger you becomes a signal, not to react, but to realign. This is how timelines dissolve, not with force, but with frequency, not by managing the external, but by magnetizing from the internal. You stop chasing, you start calibrating, you become the field you once begged to enter. And from that place, life changes, not because you asked harder, but because you finally stopped contradicting your own signal. You start to notice the subtle shifts, the pause where there used to be panic, the breath where there used to be bracing, the softness where there used to be striving. These aren't just signs of healing, they are evidence of quantum shift, because every time you choose presence over pressure, you collapse a future that was built on fear. Every time you hold your center instead of reacting from the old wound, you rewrite the electromagnetic instruction you're sending into the field. It's not about perfection, it's about pattern interruption, micro moments of awareness that become new baselines. Instead of spiraling when they don't text back, you feel the tug, and you breathe. You feel the old urge to attach meaning to the silence, and you stay in your own energy. You remember, I'm not here to manage reality. I'm here to mirror alignment. And in that one moment you shift timelines, because the version of you that spirals is not the version of you that receives. The version of you that waits for proof is not the version of you that walks in knowing. You begin to witness the inner split, the self that performs safety by controlling, and the self that embodies safety by trusting. They feel different in the body. One tightens, the other opens. One rushes, the other receives. One begs, the other breathes. You don't have to fight the part of you that still clings, Imeba. You only need to see it, to sit with it, to love it enough not to let it run the show anymore. That's how identity shifts, not by rejection, but by reparenting, by becoming the grounded presence that your younger self needed when it first learned that life required effort to be worthy. And when that reparenting becomes embodied, your energy stabilizes. You stop leaking power into people, projections, or performance. You stop outsourcing your frequency to outcomes, and suddenly you become undeniable, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. There's nothing scattered in your signal, nothing left to prove, and that kind of coherence is magnetic. Reality starts to respond, not react. The delays dissolve, the opportunities align, the relationships reflect back your own wholeness. This is why the same practice that seems so small, the pause, the breath, the choosing of presence, is actually quantum, because it interrupts the entire identity loop. The version of you that panicked needed proof, but the version of you emerging now doesn't wait for proof to feel worthy. They know. They live from the vibration of already, and already is the frequency where manifestation becomes natural, organic, unforced. You don't manifest what you visualize. You manifest what you stabilize. You don't attract what you fantasize. You attract what you feel safe to hold. That's the calibration. That's the difference between temporary highs and lasting transformation. Between chasing glimpses of a new life and stepping into the embodiment of it. Now, before the evidence, before the external changes. Because when your body leads, the field follows. And it's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the version of you that always knew. The one before the fear, before the stories, before you were taught to dim. And with every breath, every time you pause and stay instead of split and react, you're coming home to that original signal, the one that doesn't beg for timelines. It becomes the timeline. It's in those quiet moments, not the dramatic shifts, but the gentle realignments, that the old life begins to unravel. You'll notice it in the way your body no longer tightens when someone pulls away. In the way you stop interpreting delays as rejections. In the way your worth becomes less about being seen and more about feeling settled inside your own presence. These are the signs that you're no longer broadcasting survival, you're broadcasting self-recognition, and the field, always listening, begins to echo that truth back. What once felt like chasing now feels like choosing. What once felt like needing now feels like knowing. You begin to relate to life as a partner, not a prize. Not something to be earned through effort, but something to be danced with through resonance. And in this space your decisions shift, not out of fear, but out of frequency. You no longer say yes to the things that used to hook you through scarcity. You no longer collapse your truth to keep the peace. You no longer mold yourself to fit an outcome, because you've become the outcome. You've become the embodied vibration of your vision, and from that place, reality conforms. And still, the mind will try to return to the loop. Am I doing it right? Why hasn't it shown up yet? What if it's not working? These are not failures. They are echoes, remnants of an identity that was built on delay, on separation, on the idea that alignment is earned, not chosen. But now you pause, you smile, you breathe, and you remember, the shift already happened. The moment I regulated instead of reacted, I changed the code. The moment I softened instead of striving, I became a match. And now it's not about force, it's about frequency maintenance, about staying in the signal long enough for the old timelines to dissolve and the new ones to solidify. This is where real trust is born. Not the fluffy performative kind, but embodied trust. Trust that shows up in your nervous system. Trust that doesn't flinch when things get quiet. Trust that doesn't collapse when the external doesn't mirror you immediately. Because you no longer need mirrors to confirm who you are. You've become the anchor. And the moment you become the anchor, the loops lose their grip. They have nothing left to attach to. Because you're no longer vibrating with the conditions that created them. You'll start to feel it in your body. The steadiness, the openness, the coherence. It will feel like a soft, inner hum. A sense of being in tune with life. Not ahead of it, not behind it. Just with it. Present, clear, ready. And in that clarity, things begin to arrive. People, opportunities, moments of grace. Not because you chased them, but because you became the version of you who could hold them. And holding is the real magic. Because manifestation isn't about getting, it's about keeping, stabilizing, embodying the version of you for whom the manifestation is normal, natural, expected. Not a peak, but a baseline. And that only happens when the loop is broken at the root, the identity level. When you stop saying, I want this, and start saying, this is who I am now. Not as performance, as presence. So the next time the old story tries to replay, not enough, not yet, not working, let it come, let it rise, but don't follow it. Don't fight it. Just see it, feel it, and choose again. Choose presence, choose embodiment. Choose the frequency of the life you're now ready to live, not by hoping for it, but by becoming it, breath by breath, moment by moment, until that life has no choice but to meet you where you are, and suddenly what once felt like effort becomes expression. What once required constant vigilance now flows from a quiet knowing. You're no longer sculpting your reality from the outside in, you're emanating it from the inside out. You're not calculating every move, seeking validation in signs or timelines. You're listening deeper, trusting the resonance more than the result. And from this place, the most extraordinary thing begins to happen. Life gets simpler, not easier in every moment, but clearer, because you're no longer split between who you are and who you're pretending to be in order to attract what you think you need. That's the most painful loop of all, not just repeating the same life, but repeating the same self-concept, carrying the same subtle story that says, I need to fix myself to be chosen. I need to earn ease. I need to prove that I'm ready. But now you see the illusion. You feel how that story contracts your energy, fragments your power, distorts your signal, and you no longer resonate with it. It's not that you rejected it. You simply stopped feeding it. You chose coherence instead. And coherence, that stable, regulated frequency, begins to create a new field around you, one that attracts, not through intensity, but through integrity, because the universe doesn't respond to noise. It responds to clarity. And clarity isn't about knowing every detail. It's about knowing your state. Am I operating from contraction or expansion? Am I speaking from fear or from fullness? Am I waiting to feel safe, or am I being safety now? These questions are the tuning forks of your timeline, and every time you ask them, not as pressure but as permission, you recalibrate your trajectory. You might still notice the old reflexes, the temptation to shrink, to chase, to make meaning out of the silence, but now you meet them with breath, with presence, with the maturity of someone who knows I don't need to abandon myself to receive what's meant for me. I don't need to hustle for alignment. I just need to return to the vibration that already holds what I desire. That vibration lives in my body, not in the outcome, and I access it not by doing more, but by remembering more truth, more worth, more quiet power that needs no performance. The loops begin to dissolve. You don't need to repeat the same lessons because you've extracted the frequency shift. You don't need to go back and fix the past. You're vibrating in a reality where the past no longer dictates the future. You've become the quantum disruptor of your own lineage. The one who said, the cycle ends with me, not with resistance, but with resonance, with the decision to choose a new timeline, not through pressure, but through presence. And here's where the miracle lands, not as fireworks, but as peace. The kind of peace that feels like truth, the kind of peace that holds power, the kind of peace that doesn't need to predict the path because it trusts the pulse of coherence, of alignment, of knowing you've finally stopped running. You've stopped searching for the frequency. You are the frequency now. And from this place, repetition no longer means you're stuck. It means you're being invited into deeper embodiment. Not to repeat the life you had, but to fully receive the life you've already become a match for. So you begin to live differently, not just think differently. You walk slower, speak with more pause, respond with more presence. You no longer chase timelines. You inhabit them. You no longer chase people. You radiate the energy they were always meant to meet. And the most sacred truth begins to settle in your bones. You never had to earn what was already aligned with your essence. You only had to become quiet enough to receive it, stable enough to hold it, brave enough to stop repeating a life that didn't reflect your worth. Because repetition isn't just about external events, it's about internal allegiance. Who have you been loyal to? Your truth or your survival story? Your expansion or your conditioning? Every day you choose presence, you declare allegiance to the version of you that no longer needs to shrink, explain, or wait. And that version doesn't manifest by striving. They magnetize by existing, by emitting a frequency so coherent, so regulated, so full of truth that life cannot help but respond with precision. You start to witness the shift in real time. The calls come without effort. The opportunities unfold without pushing. The people around you rise to match your energy or gently fade away. Not because you're trying to control outcomes, but because you've become unshakable in your resonance. You are no longer rehearsing the past. You are remembering the future. The version of you who already knows that ease is not the opposite of effort. It is the reward of alignment, of trusting the tempo of your soul. And even in the moments when doubt whispers, when fear knocks, when the old frequencies try to pull you back, you don't regress. You remember. You breathe. You choose again. Because repetition no longer scares you. It reminds you that you are the constant. You are the signal. You are the one calibrating the entire field. And the more consistently you anchor into the new vibration, the more the external aligns, not to test you, but to mirror you. You no longer need the big signs. You start to hear the quiet ones, the peace in your chest, the steadiness in your breath, the way your body softens when you speak your truth, the way the day flows when you stop bracing. These are the confirmations. These are the miracles. This is what real transformation looks like. Not always loud, but always aligned. So if you've been repeating the same life, the same loop, the same emotional weather, know this. It's not a flaw. It's feedback. And now you're ready to receive the message, not as judgment, but as guidance. You are not stuck. You are sinking. You are stabilizing a new signal that makes the old story irrelevant. And the more you honor that signal, through presence, through breath, through quiet embodiment, the more life bends to meet you, not with force, but with frequency, not because you demanded it, because you remembered it and became it, fully, finally, now.